Alright, let's talk about a job that's about as far from a corner office as you can get. We're going to a place filled with fire-steel centuries of tradition. We're talking about making a samurai sword, the katana. Now this isn't just about making a sharp piece of metal. To the samurai, the sword was an extension of their very being. It was their honor, it was their status, it was their soul, all forged into one beautiful, deadly object. These swords weren't just tools for a fight, they were symbols of a warrior's entire way of life. They represented a commitment to discipline and perfection. For hundreds of years, these blades marked Japan's elite warrior class. A samurai's life was tied to his swords. The katana, the wakizashi together, the daisho. Losing them was like losing a part of yourself. Swords were given names and passed down through generations like heirlooms. This wasn't just a piece of equipment, it was a partner in life and death, a silent witness to a warrior's journey and fate. You can't make a world-class sword out of just any old chunk of metal. The secret to the katana starts with its raw material. It's a special type of steel called tamahagani, which translates to jewel steel. And let me tell you, it earns that name. It isn't made in some massive modern factory, it's created in a traditional clay furnace called a tatara. This is an old-school, dirty, and incredibly difficult process. For 3 days and 3 nights, a team of workers continuously shovels tons of a unique iron sand called satetsu and charcoal into the roaring furnace, a job that requires constant attention and zero mistakes. This iron sand isn't just regular sand, it's found in specific rivers and beaches in Japan, and it's rich in iron ore. But it's also full of impurities. The magic of the tatara furnace is that it doesn't get hot enough to completely melt the iron into a liquid like a modern blast furnace. Instead, it creates a spongy, uneven mass of steel with varying carbon content. This might sound like a bad thing, but for a master swordsmith, this inconsistency is actually the key to the whole process. It's the secret ingredient for what's to come. When the tatara is finally broken open, what comes out is a massive, jagged bloom of steel called akira. This thing is ugly. It's a mix of different types of steel all fused together. Some parts are very high in carbon, making them extremely hard but brittle, like glass. Other parts are lower in carbon, making them softer and more flexible, but not great at holding an edge. The swordsmith's first job, a truly dirty one, is to break this massive metal sponge apart with hammers. They carefully inspect each piece, judging it by its color, texture, and the sound it makes when struck. From this pile of seemingly random metal chunks, the smith selects the best pieces of both hard and soft steel. The hard steel, called kawagane or skin steel, will eventually become the razor-sharp cutting edge. The softer, tougher steel, called shingane or core steel, will form the supportive spine of the sword, giving it the flexibility to absorb impact without shattering. It's this brilliant combination of 2 different types of steel that begins the journey of creating a blade that is both deadly sharp and incredibly resilient. Once the swordsmith has his precious tamahagane, the real work begins in the forge. This is where the magic and the sweat really happens. The smith starts by stacking the selected pieces of steel into a rectangular block. He wraps it in paper and coats it with a wet mixture of clay and ash. This isn't just for show. The clay acts as a flux, helping to draw out impurities and prevent the steel from oxidizing too much when it's heated. The block is then thrust into the heart of the forge, a blistering inferno of burning pine charcoal that can reach temperatures over 2,300 degrees Fahrenheit. The smith watches the color of the steel with an eagle eye. He's not using a fancy digital thermometer, he's using knowledge passed down through generations, judging the heat by the specific shade of yellow-white the metal glows. When it reaches the perfect temperature, a state known as a welding heat, he pulls it from the fire. Then, with an apprentice often swinging a massive sledgehammer, the block is hammered relentlessly. Sparks fly in every direction, lighting up the dark forge like a fireworks display. The goal here is to hammer out the remaining impurities and fuse all those little pieces of tamahagane into one solid unified block of steel. This initial process, called shita kitai, or foundation forging, is brutal and repetitive. The block is heated, hammered, and flattened over and over again. Each strike of the hammer is precise. It's not just about brute force, it's about shaping the steel, refining its grain structure, and forcing out the slag and air bubbles trapped inside. You can hear the rhythm of the forge, the roar of the fire, the rhythmic clang of hammer on steel, and the sharp hiss of water as tools are cooled. It's a symphony of hard labor, a dance between man, fire, and metal. Here's the part of the job that truly sets the katana apart: the folding. After the initial forging, The swordsmith takes the hot bar of steel, cuts a deep notch nearly all the way through the middle, and then hammers it back on itself, folding it in half. Then he puts it back in the fire, heats it to welding temperature again, and hammers the two layers until they fuse into a single piece. And then he does it all over again, and again, and again. This process is repeated somewhere between 10 and 15 times, a mind-numbing amount of work. You might be wondering, why go through all this trouble? It's not just to look cool. Each fold doubles the number of layers in the steel. After just one fold, you have 2 layers. After 2 folds, you have 4. After 10 folds, you have over 1,000 layers, 1,024 to be exact. By the time the smith is done, the steel can have tens of thousands of incredibly thin, alternating layers. This does 2 crucial things. First, it further distributes the carbon content throughout the steel, making it much more uniform. Any remaining impurities are stretched out and minimized, strengthening the entire blade. The second reason for folding is to create the beautiful and unique grain pattern seen on the surface of a polished katana, known as the jihada. This is it. The single most dramatic and nerve-wracking moment in the entire sword-making process. After weeks of painstaking labor, forging, folding, applying the clay, everything comes down to these few seconds. A swordsmith, often working at night in a darkened forge, prepares the clay-coated blade for one final heat. He must heat it evenly along its entire length, to a precise temperature, around 1400 degrees Fahrenheit. He judges the moment by the steel's glow, the color of the morning sun. If the blade is too hot, it could crack. If it's too cool, it won't harden properly. The timing must be perfect. At the exact right moment, with a focused intensity in the air, the smith pulls the glowing blade from the fire. In one swift, decisive motion, he plunges it into a trough of water. A violent hiss erupts. A massive cloud of steam explodes from the trough, filling the workshop. This is the yaki ire, the water quenching, the baptism of the blade, the moment it is truly born. As the blade hits the water, a rapid and dramatic transformation occurs. The difference in cooling rates forces the blade to naturally curve. The edge side shrinks less than the spine side, pulling the blade into its iconic graceful arc. After surviving its trial by fire and water, the blade is still a long way from finished. It's covered in scale from the fire and remnants of the clay. Its true beauty is hidden. Now, the job is handed over to another master craftsman, the togishi or sword polisher. This job is just as demanding, requires just as much skill as the smith's, but it's a quieter, more meticulous, dirty work. The polisher's job is not just to make the sword shiny, it is to reveal the soul of the blade. The polisher uses a series of water stones, very coarse grits, progressively finer grits. This is not a quick buffing job with a power tool. It is done entirely by hand, inch by inch over many days or weeks. The polisher sits for hours, rubbing the stones against the steel, his hands and workspace constantly covered in a gritty, muddy slurry. Each stone refines the geometry of the blade, creating crisp, clean lines and flat surfaces. As he reaches the finest stones, something magical begins. The details hidden within the steel start to emerge. One of the first things you notice about a katana is its elegant, graceful curve. It's not just for looks. This shape, called the sori, is a masterpiece of functional design, born directly from the unique way the sword is made. As we saw, the curve isn't hammered into the blade. It's created naturally during the quenching process when the hot, clay-coated blade is plunged into water. The edge cools and shrinks faster than the insulated spine, forcing the entire blade to bend into its characteristic arc. This curve is essential to how the sword is used. Unlike the straight, heavy swords of Europe, which were often used for hacking and bashing through armor, the katana was designed for slicing. The curve allows the samurai to draw the blade through a target in a fluid, pulling motion. This makes the cut more efficient and requires less force from the user. The blade slices like a razor rather than chopping like an axe, creating clean, deep cuts. The curve allows the force of the blow to be concentrated on a smaller section of the blade, increasing its cutting power dramatically. Today, on September 4, 2025, the age of the samurai is long gone. Battles are no longer decided by the skill of a swordsman, yet the art of making a katana lives on. It has survived not as a craft for making weapons of war, but as a protected cultural treasure. The master swordsmiths in Japan today are considered national living treasures, and their work is seen as the pinnacle of craftsmanship. They are preserving a dirty, difficult job that connects the modern world to 1,000 years of history, philosophy, artistry. The influence of the katana extends far beyond the shores of Japan. Its design, its mythology, the sheer coolness factor have permeated global culture. You see it in movies and comic books and in video games. The image of the curved blade is an instant symbol of precision, honor, and deadly grace. But this fame often overshadows the real story, the story of the incredible labor, the generations of knowledge, and the unwavering dedication that goes into making a single blade. It's easy to admire the finished product, but it's the dirty process that gives it true value. The real legacy of samurai sword making isn't just the object itself, it's the spirit behind its creation. It's the idea of shokunin, the craftsman's spirit, which means dedicating your life to mastering your trade and striving for perfection in everything you do, no matter how small the task. This philosophy is about taking pride in your work, respecting your tools and materials, and understanding that the process is just as important as the result. It's a lesson that applies to any job, whether you're forging steel or filing paperwork. Do it with honor, do it with dedication, and do it right. So the next time you see a katana, I hope you see more than just a sharp object. I hope you see the fire of the forge, the sweat of the smith, and the rhythm of the hammer. I hope you see the thousands of layers folded into the steel and the ghost of a cloud trapped in the temper line. It's a reminder that some of the most beautiful, respected, and enduring things in this world are born from the dirtiest, most difficult jobs imaginable, and that's a legacy worth preserving, a story forged in fire and steel that will never grow dull.